Hi, everyone. My name is Tanner, and welcome back to another episode of the Man to Man Coverage Podcast. Today, I'm joined with my great co host and friend, Mason.
What's up, guys?
And if you're watching this on YouTube, I do want to apologize for the non face cam look. That's just kind of how things are going to be, at least for the next episode or so. If you're listening to this on iTunes or Apple Podcast or Spotify, you have nothing to be concerned about. But I just want to say that to our YouTube viewers. Today's episode is going to be a very serious topic. You know, usually in our podcast, we like to make jokes and have fun, and we're still going to try to have that personality, but there's going to be a lot less jokes in this one as we're going to be talking about serious NFL issues. You know, we love talking about football, but there's a lot of things with injuries and weed and steroid usage that I think should be addressed. And most likely, we're going to have things that people do not agree with. That is fine. Just try to remain peaceful in the comments or responses. So the first thing we'll be talking about here is injuries. This is a huge issue in the NFL with concussions. There's a Will Smith movie about a couple of years ago that really talked about it, and I took a sports psychology class 2 years ago and we talked about this. It's a serious issue. Here's how I kind of look at it. I think there's a couple ways to go about it, and the first one is that I feel like people single out football because people getting tackled and hit. However, I feel like there's other sports that like boxing and wrestling are way more physical, and in football you have protection, and I feel like that's going to evolve over time. So the first point I really want to make, and we can talk about, is that the technology of the NFL is continuing to innovate. It's continuing to get better. And I feel like we're seeing more and more people play a long time. Like Adam Vinatieri just retired. He played for a long time. Granted, he's a kicker, but still, I mean, Tom Brady, Larry Fitzgerald, Aaron Rodgers, a lot of guys are playing longer. I feel like that's kind of becoming more of a trend. So the technology in the NFL is just getting a lot better. So, Mason, I want to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, I think the NFL gets a bad rep, like you said, from the injuries standpoint. But everything you said is correct. I mean, if you look from the 1950s to now, the technology improvement is like absurd. It's just way more safe for the players, a lot more comfortable, and players don't have to put that much more on the line like they did back in the day. But even if you look, like for example, 10 years ago, I mean, they incorporated the concussion protocol, which is still fairly new, which has really been making sure players come back at the right time. You have new helmets being made every single year. They're trying out new things, and even this past year with COVID, they implemented these new face mask technologies that they put over the face mask, and it can help limit the spread of COVID. So it just shows the NFL's on the spot innovation, like you said, Tanner, and whatever money they need to spend in order to get these players to be safe as possible. I mean, the shoulder pads have made a huge improvement. The cleats, the shoes they wear is way better than what they used to be. The players don't roll their ankles as much. They don't get broken toes or anything like that. Uh, the players are getting taped up every game. Yeah, everything Tanner said. I mean, they even made prescribed what's it called, visors for players that have trouble seeing. So I mean, the innovation in the technology world is like really really good to see.
Yeah, those are all good points. I agree with everything you said. Also, in today's NFL, there's a lot more scoring.
Hmm.
There's higher scoring games. So you have more points. You have more points on the scoreboard, meaning less tackling and stuff. Back in the day with football in like the 70s and 80s, was a lot more running and tackling. There still is that today, but I feel like the higher scoring emphasis, I feel like just there's less room for potential injuries. I don't know if I don't have the facts to back that up, but it just seems that way. You don't see as many big hits. So yeah, the technology is way better. And then also another thing I do want to mention is that in an English class I took, my teacher said, "What's the difference between football and something like gambling? Because when you gamble, you're taking a risk. In football, you're taking a risk with your body getting hit." I agree with that to an extent that yes, that's the thing with football. It's not a requirement, and there's plenty of research tools so that way you know about what you're getting into. The thing is, football offers many upsides. There's, bonding brotherhoods. Mason, you're on a smaller basketball team, and you still
Mhm.
have made great connections. Sports can be bonding activities. You can grow and have friends and family for life. I think that's a really big part of it. You can help the community, and it's fun. It's a fun thing to do. It's athletic. You can get to show off your talents, and people like playing it. And if they don't, they can retire, and that option is there. So I just feel like that, yes, there is a risk. I'm not going to ignore it, but I feel like the upside is immense with the sport of football, and I think that's kind of the big thing in all sports.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it just differs for every person. I mean, if you're willing to take the risks and know that, hey, there's a chance that you can get a serious injury like a concussion, or like a broken arm, broken leg, not even anything as serious as that, just like a bruised rib or something like that. I mean, if that's something you're willing to risk in order to get the things that Tanner said, such as like having fun, which is a big one, and overall just making bonds, and why not do it? But if you're not willing to take those risks, like I know from my point of view, I love football, but it personally just wasn't. I just knew it wasn't for me to actually play, like in high school and stuff, just because I know it was fun and all, but the risk wasn't worth it for me. But I still don't think it's an issue that NFL and football in general needs to be hated on for, because I feel like everyone generally knows the risks associated with it. And not only that, but what Tanner said is like what it brings to people. Not everyone's going to go pro. I mean, it's a very small chance, but there's a lot of people out there that use football as a gateway in order to get a degree in school. They get scholarships for football, and that really helps them pay for school and get the degree so they can go on and have a career somewhere else. So I think football is a great pathway for a lot of people that may not be academically gifted to get a scholarship, but they're very football gifted in order to get that scholarship and able to take them to school.
Yeah, I love that career pathway point, Mason. That's really good. I didn't think about that. It's not mentioned a ton, so I really do like that point. Another thing is, I guess for lack of a better word, clarify, is that with football, I mean, these people getting hit, they're big
Mhm.
guys. They're training. They trained for this. We're talking about this on an NFL level now. Talking about kids in school who play, that's more of a different conversation. But I just feel like the NFL, there's a lot of safety protocols. Yes, concussions are an issue. Yes, injuries are an issue. There have been people who have retired because of it for sure. But I still feel like ultimately that there's a lot more, like you said, the technology's better. There's a lot of pathways that, and that's kind of the same with a lot of things. I mean, a lot of professions, people retire because it's not going well, so that's kind of how I look at that. That's all I have to say about the injury side of football. And yes, injuries do happen, but I also think sometimes they're over exaggerated a bit. People are like, oh my gosh, it's like a gladiator like sport, which I just don't like that comparison because with football, yeah, it does happen, but there's a lot of other things that happen and a lot of games get played. Like, for instance, this past year's Super Bowl, yeah, there were some injuries, especially on the Chiefs front, but overall, most teams were healthy. And I think injury is a part of football. It's about overcoming and adapting. I'm an Eagles fan, and I love Philadelphia Eagles, and they won their Super Bowl with a backup quarterback because their starting QB got injured. That's just kind of a part of the sport. So if you don't have anything to say, Mason, we can move on to the next topic.
Yeah, just one little quick point. I mean, injuries are part of the sport, but there's like very few times where I mean, there's some players that just get really unlucky and they have a ton of injuries, but other than that, a lot of players usually only have a couple injuries, or luckily none major ones. I mean, just from recent example, Luke Kuechly and like players like that. Um, it's very unfortunate that they have to go through so many concussions and things of that nature, but um, overall, the NFL, most of the NFL doesn't have to deal with that many injuries.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. So the next issue I'm going to be talking about is steroids. Steroids have always been a thing throughout sports, and it really kind of got popular with Lance Armstrong, the cyclist, whose career and reputation got tarnished because of them. Now, steroids, I feel like there are more in baseball with people like a Barry Bonds, but in the NFL, there's always that debate about performance enhancing drugs. There's this one quote, not a quote, it's something people have said, and it's like, if makeup is allowed in a beauty contest, why are steroids not allowed in the NFL? That is something that people have said. Um, Here's kind of my response to this. So, the whole point of the beauty contest is how you can apply the makeup. You have makeup artists. You don't have steroid artists. That would be a very weird thing. I mean, steroids, you just kind of take them. With makeup, you have to apply a certain way. And the whole point, that's beauty contests. With NFL, it's all about training and being competitive. So taking anything that enhances that is cheating and is a shortcut. So I think that's kind of the best response to that.
Yeah, I don't think steroid use should ever be allowed because like you said, that comparison. I mean, that like you said, it's about how you apply makeup. The steroids is a completely different thing. It's about how you apply your skills to get better at football, kind of like the makeup thing, not applying things such as steroids. Not only that, but there's like a lot of negative side effects of steroids. It can lower like or it can boost testosterone, I believe, to like a very unhealthy amount. I mean, it causes rage and people can develop serious anger problems, which is just not healthy for other people around them and their own mental health. As well as you said, I feel like it's a shortcut. Players are in the gym and the weight room every day, trying to get better the right way. And steroids is just not the right way. And it's just there's so many negative impacts off the field that I just don't think it should ever be allowed. And yeah, pretty much all I gotta say on that.
Yeah, I think this is, out of all the topics we're covering today, this is kind of the one that has been kind of covering the least. But yeah, I think it is important to talk about. The next thing we'll talk about is the whole racial justice stuff with the NFL. Now, this is a very tricky topic to talk about, so I'm going to
Mhm.
choose my words wisely. I think that ever since the whole George Floyd incidents, which I believe it's been about a year or so since that has happened, I think that the NFL has been more aware of the social injustices that are occurring and they're working better towards it. In my opinion, the NFL should give the players the right to speak their mind on the platform. And I think players should be judged on the talent as well. What's difficult about the Colin Kaepernick situation is while Kaepernick was doing his protesting, the team he played for, the 49ers, and Kaepernick's play were not good. Kaepernick was like he was like the 20th, 25th, starting rank quarterback. So he was kind of like okay to not good. So it was hard because on one hand, he was standing up for something he believed in, but his play was declining. So it was just kind of a whole mess to kind of sort teams with that out. I think that when you look at the NFL, you should judge a player on how they play, and the stuff with their personality should be something that you could decipher how distracting that is or not. For instance, when Tim Tebow went religious with playing, some teams didn't like that, but also Tim Tebow didn't play well. So it was kind of a mix. I think for me, when I think Colin Kaepernick should be given another chance, but I think he should be judged very much on his talent. I think that's the NFL should be judged is how well the person can play. If you have someone who has a strong belief for something, I think the team should try to support it. Or if the team or NFL has an issue with it, that they should try talking to the person. If now, should the NFL have an issue with that, with Colin Kaepernick kneeling? I don't believe they should have an issue, but if they do, they should try talking to the person about it privately and not making a whole media scene out of it. I feel like the whole Tim Tebow and Colin Kaepernick thing are they're very different, but also comparable because they were things that players did that the NFL was not the biggest fan of. But I just feel like the Broncos and the 49ers should have just talked to the players in private and said, hey, this is what's going on. And I think that those situations got really overexploded and really overblown more than they should have been. I think that, Kaepernick and Tebow would still be in the NFL. Well, Kaepernick because Tebow got signed, but Kaepernick, I think, would still be in the NFL if the whole situation was handled a lot more privately. But again, it goes down to players should be based off of their talent. The personality that can either help a player or not, but that's not what you should judge them on. AB, he was a great player. The talent was, or the Antonio Brown, he was a great player. The talent was there. However, the personality wasn't. That's why he got cut from the Raiders. But he fixed his attitude, and now he's on Tampa Bay. And I think that's kind of a good example. Kind of the talent's there. Now his personality is very extreme, but I think just if like let's say there's a player coming out in college next year or so who's very much politically active and a lot of stuff, I feel like teams should view them on how that person plays. And if they play their position, then awesome. Draft them and hope that they're a positive influence. I think that's the best way to say it. Like, for instance, I love Zach Wilson coming out. If Zach Wilson was very politically active or whatever it may be, then if it's something positive, I will say, like, if he was active for like social justice or equal rights and he's very active, I wouldn't let that affect my decision. He's an excellent talent, and that's a good layer. Now, if someone comes out who is maybe not saying the best things, then you kind of like have the AB situation. But I think if someone stands for something that's decisive, then you should definitely um, try talking to them in private. That's what it comes down to. So I know that's a lot to say and it's very tricky, but I definitely think with the NFL, it's something that the TiVo and Kaepernick stuff should be kept private. I hope that made sense.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think as long as it's not affecting their play on the field, I see no problem with players standing up for what they believe in. Even if you don't agree with them, like if you don't agree with Tebow's beliefs or Kaepernick's beliefs or whoever's beliefs, I think you should always respect them as long as they're not obviously harming other people. Um, but like to judge someone off their off the field activities, like Johnny Manziel, for example, his off the field stuff was affecting his on the field play, so that's why the Browns ultimately cut him because that actually affected his play. But I like what you said, like Tebow and the 49ers, or excuse me, the Broncos and the 49ers probably get it handled both of the situations better if there was more of a private discussion. But instead, we live in a social media era, so everything is just either leaked or posted on social media, which really sucks sometimes because not everything is kept private between the organization and players. Um, I'm glad to see Tebow got another chance. I would love to see Kaepernick get another chance as well. Just as long as the team thinks he's playing good, I mean, there's no problem with it. Tebow got a lot of backlash in the Jaguars for signing him, but I feel like if the Jaguars saw something they liked in him, why not? Same with any team they like Kaepernick. I don't see a problem with them signing him if they um, think he's going to help their team out. Um, I also don't think someone's like political belief should ever affect their what's it called their job security. I think everyone has a right to their own opinion, and I'm glad that players are standing up for whatever reason, whatever any kind of cause. I'm glad they're standing up because they have such a massive platform and they reach out to so many people. They have a big influence, so it's good to see they're using their platforms for good. I mean, I know we're talking football, but LeBron James, for example, he's easily the most famous athlete in America. And he uses his platform all the time to spread positivity and awareness about situations. And I think that's a good idea for a lot of players to do. And I don't think teams should release them if they don't agree. In a sense, I feel like it's always better just to talk about it in private, like you said, Tanner. These situations could be handled a lot better. But overall, I'm a big fan of people using their platforms as long as it's not hurting anyone else. But players like Antonio Brown and Johnny Manziel, their off the field stuff really affected their play. I mean, Antonio Brown, he's cleaned up now, which is good to see. He's doing well with the Buccaneers. He just won a Super Bowl, so it's good to see that players can turn it around. Jamarcus Russell, another example. I mean, he wasn't watching film, he wasn't going to practice. His off the field stuff was really just affecting his play, and that's why he ended up not lasting long in the NFL.
Yeah, it's kind of like here's my example. So for me, it's like you're eating a sundae. Like you get some bananas, some ice cream. That's kind of the player talent. Whenever you eat a sundae, it's more about like that stuff. But the toppings do matter. And in this analogy, the toppings are the personality. So Johnny Manziel, it's like if you have a sundae and just put like a pickle on it, like that's gonna taste terrible. Didn't really work, just didn't work. It just was like no. However, there have been reports that Aaron Rodgers is hard to work with. And it's like if you put ketchup on a sundae, like yeah, the sundae still tastes good, it still tastes fine, but it's bothersome. It's like yeah, Aaron Rodgers on your team, it might be bothersome, but he's still gonna get wins. That's kind of how I look at the whole personality talent. Personality does matter and it can't ruin it, but I think ultimately whenever you eat a sundae, you're focused on the main dish, and I think that's kind of the best way to kind of talk about those whole things. But, you know, with the whole George Floyd stuff last year, I was happy to see the NFL give players that platform, and it was nice to see teams support players. I felt like there was a lot of unification with the NFL. So I think we talked about this to the best of ability we could. I'm interested to see how the Tim Tebow thing goes. I guess we'll mention it here. I'm happy. It's a very small deal. Tim Tebow and Urban Meyer being the Jaguars head coach, were connected because Meyer was Tebow's head coach at Florida. I think that's kind of part of it.
Mhm.
Tebow's very athletic. He's played baseball. I think it's going to be a fun story that's going to fizzle out. My opinion is Tebow will be like the third tight end or second tight end. I think he'll have a couple cool plays you'll see on the highlight stuff and trending on social media, but I don't think he's going to be a huge impact player. And I think Colin Kaepernick will be given another chance. Kaepernick's build is very unique. He's tall and he's fast, so he could play a lot of things. I could see him playing wide receiver or corner. It's just does he want to? But I do think he'll be given another chance, and especially with his more mobile build, we're seeing people like Lamar Jackson have success. So the mobile stuff definitely does help Colin Kaepernick.
Yeah.
And then moving on to the final topic, it'll be marijuana and weed because that's kind of a big thing. Now, here's how I kind of think about this. For me, it's like as long if you're taking it that it's not affecting you or your personality, you're still able to focus and play like any other player, then it should be fine. Now, if it's affecting you or like not focusing on team meetings or being distracting to your team or disrespectful or just not putting that much in and it's having an effect on you, then I think you should be punished. But if you're taking it and it's not really affecting one way or another, then I don't think there should be a huge rule on it. That's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, I kind of see it as alcohol, where it's like NFL players are allowed to drink alcohol, but obviously, if it's affecting how they act and how they play, then it's definitely something the team should take care of. I always feel like it's a team issue first.
Yeah,
If the person's not going through it. And from this, like all the stories I've heard, because I know I've heard a lot of stories of players that have taken weed uh, during their career, and I've only heard good things about it. Because as we talked about earlier, NFL is like a lot of hard hitting. I mean, there's like hits almost every other play, especially offensive linemen. They're getting hit every single play. Defensive linemen, and they say it feels like they got in a car crash that Monday right after the game, and they said weed really helps with the pain. So I like that aspect of it. If it helps the players recover better, I'm a big fan of it. But like what Tanner said, if it's affecting you in a way that's not benefiting you really at all, and it's hurting the team, I think the team should really um, look into that and really help that player out, because some players do struggle mentally, not knowing. I mean, everyone struggles mentally, but there's going to be players in the NFL that struggle mentally, that don't know how to control the substances that they take. So I think the team should always be there for them and make sure everyone gets the right help and they're not overdoing anything, not taking too much weed, not drinking a lot of too much alcohol, stuff of that nature. But I think it can really help players out.
yeah. Was it confirmed that Calvin Johnson
Hmm.
took
Yeah.
that stuff when he played? Like for him, his talent, in my opinion, was through training, technique, and ability. And he seemed like a great teammate, so it didn't affect him. So it's a very interesting thing to talk about. And I think that's about it for this episode. I think we kind of cover the major topics. I know people talk about like suspensions and stuff, but I don't know. There's a lot of facts about that. And I just didn't feel like getting into that. But Mason, if you don't have anything to add on, then I'll say this is that the NFL is definitely an evolving league. And I think it's important to talk about the stuff because as they move forward, it'll be interesting to see where they end up taking it.
Oh yeah, I'm glad the NFL has been pretty flexible with their rules, as of late. Especially, I feel like maybe if we tied this talk like 10, 15 years ago, really what the NFL was pretty set on their rules. But I feel like with NFL players like standing up for themselves more recently and stuff like that, I feel like there's a lot more flexibility, and think it's a really good thing for the league.
It is. And sorry that this episode was a bit different, but we'll be back to talk about NFL news in the future. Until then, take care.